Well, welcome tonight. So, tonight, I wanted to start out with a question. Something I've been thinking about this week. And sometimes I'm very cautious about that because, I always talk off the cuff. And when I start thinking about things ahead of time, I know I can get myself in trouble because usually it's not spontaneous. But what I was thinking about this week, and I actually wrote something that I'm going to read to you guys tonight, if you haven't seen it already. But the question that came up to me was, do we really need to study anything in order to make a connection with something greater than ourselves? Do we really need to study Buddhism or anything, quite frankly? Or are these things available to us if we just look? And if you read a lot of the wisdom books and a lot of the ancient teachers, they allude to the fact that it's all out there already. All we have to do is tap into it. That it is not necessary to become any particular kind of person or follow any particular religion or philosophy, that these truths cut through all of them and they're universal in nature. So studying a particular way may give you something to do while you're discovering these truths, but the particular ways or practices aren't necessarily, they're not needed per se. So I wrote this thing that I put up on Facebook. It's like a little free verse. And it says, everything we need to know is inside of ourselves. What prevents us from hearing is the seemingly inexhaustible stream of questions that we ask. If we quietly listen, what is needed to be known in this moment will be revealed, not the answer to the questions that we so desperately ask. Listen to what is being offered, and eventually all questions will be answered. Eventually, the questions, along with the questioner, will fade into the silence from which the answers came. And this is kind of something that came to me about that. It's that, and it's kind of a little mini realization I had. I've spent all of my life, and I think I've talked about this in some of the other talks I've given, that I've always been a seeker, a questioner. Even in my teenage years, I used to go out in the middle of the night and be in the middle of a field and just almost pound on the ground and go, I want to know. I want to know what there is. Where's God? Who's God? What is this? I've always had that questioning and wanting to know something that I don't know. And what came to me when I wrote this was that that's precisely what keeps us from hearing what we need to hear. If we continually ask ourselves questions, if we continually busy our minds with trying to use our minds to figure out the answers, we don't have the opportunity to simply listen to what's already being said to us. And I think that's the way it works. I know for me it does. Yes, right? Do you?
Then what you really need to teach is to guide people to ask better questions.
Well, no, let me continue here, because that's true in a way, but that's not really where I'm headed. Where I'm headed with this is that when we stop asking specific questions about any particular thing, when we quiet our minds, it's like something is speaking to us. And in different traditions, it's referred to as many different things. And, I again, me, I hesitate to put names on things and words, and because to me, they're just words. So I want to talk about this process, not where it comes from or what it is or what I imagine it is. Because whatever I imagine it is my own imagination, quite frankly. But I do know it exists. And the way it works for me is when I meditate, my goal in meditation is to experience silence, not to experience feelings or revelations or to hear something profound. It's to just simply rest in silence as best I can. And whatever comes into my mind, whatever thoughts do come, I just watch them and I kind of try and ignore them. It's like, yeah, they're there, but I'm letting another part of my mind kind of just be there too. And in that resting, I think it does us a lot of benefit. It gives us a lot of benefit, both physically and mentally. But it also allows us to reach that silence, that stillness where these answers do come from. And for me, I'm sure it's not this way for everyone. For me, that comes after. It's like I'll be somewhere doing something or driving or walking, and all of a sudden it's like a voice in my head. And it starts to talk to me, and it'll say, whatever, have you noticed this? Or what about that? Or, oh, now I get it. It's almost like there's a difference between what I'm talking about and my everyday thoughts. It's a different voice. And again, I hate to even use that word, voice, because then all of a sudden our imaginations start to say, well, is it this, I don't know what it is. All I know is that all of a sudden I'll understand things I didn't understand before. I'll realize that they were questions that I had asked before, but maybe years ago. And then all of a sudden, the answer it's just like it's there. It's like, oh, I get it now. That's what it was. It doesn't happen when I quiet my mind, but I think it's the result of quieting my mind. That when I learn to not, if I spend enough time in silent stillness, that I make the connection to whatever it is where these things come from. But it doesn't, again, it occurs kind of when I'm just in my everyday walking around kind of thing. And like I said, I'm sure it's different for other people. Maybe some people, it happens while they're meditating or while they're asking questions. But it just seems to me my answers come when I'm not asking the questions. And that's what I was trying to write about here, was that the answers come, and the answers, they're not concrete answers, but there's something comes about in such a way that whatever the question was, the question's no longer important to me. The question just goes away. It's like I don't care about that anymore. Care is not the right word, but it's kind of like it gets resolved. Maybe that's the best way to put it. And so the question, along with the one who's asking the question, which is my mind, goes away, or it just fades away. It's no longer pertinent anymore, and it's not driving me crazy not knowing. So I started thinking about that. Well, can that be taught? And honestly, I don't think it can, in a funny way. And so what came to me was kind of like a joke. The joke is, you guys can keep coming to talk to me until you start talking to yourselves. And then you don't have to come here anymore. So I don't know what that means, but it just sort of came to me as sort of a silly thing. Is like, this can't be taught. It can be pointed at. And that's the old Buddhist thing about, it's the finger pointing to the moon. It's like, it's not the finger. It's not me telling you how to do this, but it can be done. And if you allow it to happen within you, it will. But I can't tell you how that is, because each person's different. Each person's makeup is different. Each person's, the things that mean certain things to you are not the things that mean anything to me. I could write a book about this. I could write a formula how to do it. Do this on day one, do this on week one, do this on month one, do this on year one. Practice this, practice that. But all I'll be telling you is what I did. And I don't know that it has any value for anyone else. The only thing that's important is that you continue to remain open to the possibility that the answers are already out there waiting to be told to you. And the only hint I can give you, the only advice I can give you that has any worthwhileness, I think, because it jives with what I've read in other books and such from other teachers, is that we have to stop our minds. We have to stop the incessant nature of questioning. Because I don't know if you notice, if you start to pay attention to what's going on in your head, and we've talked a little bit about this before, but this is sort of a different twist on it, you'll notice that you ask yourself a lot of questions during the day. You know, and some of them are true questions, like, you know, where do I have to go? A lot of them are based in, why are things the way they are? Why does this have to happen? Why does that have to happen? You know, what do I do about this? I mean, they're all questions. And of course, that's part of life. But I think we can get into the habit of using our thinking minds too much to continue that stream of questioning and judging and asking, so that there's no time left for just listening. Well, how often do we just, and is it possible for the average person on the street to sit down for any length of time at all